Hi, good evening. My name is Kamal Tekwani.
And my name is Abhijeet Sugam.
So we are here to present our blockchain project for fall 2022 term. So we have created an application which is termed as CredAuthentiFi app. The CredAuthentiFi app is a decentralized application which is used to verify and validate the credentials of the particular user. So basically in this application there are three actors or user. First, credential issuing authority. The credential issuing authority is an entity that issues the certificate or the credential to a particular user. This entity will add the credential onto the blockchain. The second actor is background verification vendor. So background verification vendor is an entity that fetches all the relevant details of the credential. Third, the individual user. Individual user checks the validity of his or her credential. Now, before moving on the implementation part, we will going to give you an highlight about the tools which we used for the development of this application. First, Remix ID. So basically the Remix ID is an online ID which is used for the development of smart contracts. So we'll give you an overview about it. So first of all, we'll go to the file explorer, and in the contract folders we will create a new file .credauth.sol. In this file we will going to write our smart contract, data types, functions, modifiers. All the smart contract code will be written in this file. After the successful compilation, we will going to deploy this file. But before compilation, we need to check a relevant or a compatible compiler according to the compiler version defined in the Solidity file. So we'll compile this. You can see we have clearly compiled and there are some warnings, but we will deploy it to the blockchain server. So before deploying, we will going to check the environment. So here we will going to select the environment or a wallet as a MetaMask. That is one of the injected provider, which will going to show the wallet which is currently present in the MetaMask, from which the deployment will going to happen. So this account will reflect all the balance in the form of ethers. So we'll press the button deploy. You can see after pressing the deploy, a call has been made to the MetaMask wallet and a MetaMask wallet window has been popped up at the right hand side. That clearly shows a contract deployment as the transaction, as well as some of the estimated gas like numbers 0.02413 ETH, and we will going to confirm this transaction. This we are showing it on a Ganache network so that we will have a small amount of latency. So you can see the transaction has been confirmed and the pop-up has been shown in the right bottom. So the deployed contract section will contain our deployed contract. These are the functions which are present in our deployed contract: add credentials, register user, register vendor, unregister, get credential list, register, validate credential. So these functions have the proper privileges to be called by vendors, chairperson, users, etc. according to the privileges given to the actors or the roles. Now I'll going to explain you the Solidity code. So first of all, we have created a CredAuth Solidity file. Address of a chairperson is captured, the person who is currently deploying or adding the credential of the user. Now we have declared the structure type credential, which contains all the relevant attributes of the credentials. So what we can think of attributes of the credential, like status, university, zip code, expiry date. These are all the relevant details or the attributes which we can define is associated with the credential. We have created a mapping of address to a credential. It acts as a key value, key as an address, and we have created an array of address named credential list. We will store all the credentials, means all the credential list into this address array. Now we have also created a mapping for registration, because here we are maintaining the three actors or roles. We have placed a modifier only chairperson, only user and only vendors according to the privileges given to them. We have also defined a constructor which sets the deployment account as a chairperson. The person who has actually deployed the contract will also act as a chairperson. Now we will move to some functions. We have register user function. The only privileges given to the register user can be invoked by chairperson only. Now we will move to second, register vendor. This method can be invoked by only chairperson. Similarly, the unregistration is also invoked by the only chairperson. Now we will be moving to add credentials. This is one of the most important function of our application. Basically, this is the entry point of the credential onto the blockchain, from where all the other transaction or future transaction will going to occur. So it takes all the necessary details as an input parameters, and setting it into a credential list will create an object of credential and set the values which are taken as an input, and will make it as an object and push it into the credential list or into an array. The next function we'll talk about is the get credential list. So it takes an address as an input parameter, which can only be invoked by the vendor, because as you remember, vendor is the only person who can fetch all the relevant details about the credentials. So it will going to give me the details of the credentials like status, what was the university name, what was the issue date, address, expiry date, etc. So talking about the last function, that is the validate credential. It can only be invoked by the user. This function will only tell the user the validity, not all the details, because the user have all the details in prior, but he needs to check till how much time the credential is valid. Now we will going to move on our front end part, that is dApp application. So what we will do, we have just deployed it onto a server, then the address has been generated, because for each and every deployment a new address has been generated. We'll copy this one and we will going to replace it into the app.js under the address attribute. We will save this file and we will run this application. Starting the application from npm install, it will check all the dependencies and vulnerabilities, will start the server. So our application is started on the port 3000. So we'll in the address URL we'll going to type 3010. Okay, sorry, 3000. So this is our first landing page of our credential identification system. So if you can see the walk around, there are some registration tabs for user registration, unregistration, vendor registration, and add credentials, credence details, validations, etc. So I'll tell you about the registration. The registration is the part which is only invoked by the chairperson, or what we can say the credential issuing authority. Because credential issuing authority has the privileges to make the person or a background verification team to be a part that can access their data or check the details of the credentials. So we'll register a user as of now. We'll put it in address bar. First of all, before putting it, we will going to check it in Remix whether it is registered or not. If you can see, if we have done the registered option, then it is showing 0. That means it is not registered with our system. So what we will do, we'll going to register. After that, you can see a pop-up window for the wallet confirmation has been popped out, and we have used an account 5 or set an account 5 as a chairperson. We'll confirm the transaction. You can see the transaction has been performed successfully, and user is registered with a address ID 0x9c. So we'll going to back to the smart contract, and we'll check for the registration. If we will going to check the unit 256, that is user has been registration with a 1. So that means a user has been successfully registered at the blockchain. Second part, we will again come to the vendor registration. Similarly, the process goes on for the vendor registration. For vendor registration, we have selected the address, copied into the address bar, and register vendor. The pop-up comes up, and we press the confirm button. So this is the debugging which we have done for the vendor registration. Now we will check the vendor has been registered successfully or not. So if we can see the unit 256, the return value returns us 2. That means vendor is registered. 1 for the user, 2 for the vendor. That's good. Now we will going to add the credential onto the blockchain. So for that, only the chairperson has the right to do it. So we can confirm it once again. Account number 5 has been selected at the MetaMask. Okay, that's cool. We can proceed it further. We'll fill all the relevant details of the credentials. A decentralized address has been created for a particular credential. We'll enter the validity of the credential, the university name or the credential issuing authority which has issued the credential, zip code, issued date of the credential, that means the credential on which date it was issued to the user. Similarly, the expiration days also goes that way. Also, the credential ID and the credential title will also plays a major role to identify which certification has been acquired by the particular user. Now the name of the person the credential is issued to. In this case, the credential is issued to the Abhijeet Sugam. So we have filled all the relevant details and some validation checks are performed on this well. So we'll add credentials. As soon as we add credentials, similarly the MetaMask pops up for the confirmation of account that have an estimated gas fees and some of the total like amount, maximum amount that is confirmed. We'll press the confirm icon. As soon as we press confirm, you can see the credential has been added successfully to the blockchain. For the reference, what we will going to do, we can verify it at the backend, but before verifying it at the backend, we need to switch it to the vendor, because vendor has the right to fetch all the relevant details. As you know, we have registered the vendor. So account number 6 refers to the vendor. We will switch it to the vendor in the MetaMask wallet. Okay. What we will going to do, we will enter the decentralized address of the credential into the address bar. So this was the credential details which was used in order to add the credential. We'll copy this and paste it in address bar. Now we will press get credentials. you can see that all the details which are entered into the add credentials section has been populated. That shows that our credential is present on the blockchain. That also means that no one will going to tamper this credential. If any tampering occurs in the physical document, that can be mismatched or invalidated from the blockchain. That means the document is faked or has been tampered by some other fraudulent user. Now we will show the functionality for the individual user. Let's suppose Abhijeet Sugam wants to check the validity of his credential, because this was the transaction performed by the background verification team. So we'll go with the Abhijeet Sugam account, that is the user account. So before switching to the user account, we will switch it into the MetaMask. If you can see in the notepad, the user account is account number 7, means Abhijeet's account is account number 7. So we'll switch it to account number 7. So after switching, we will paste the address of the credential into the address bar. Now the Abhijeet Sugam will have the idea that his credential will going to expire on 24/11/2025 and it is valid. But let's suppose if the credential is expired, it will show invalid, means credential is invalid and the expiry date was the date which has been passed. Now I will going to show you the unregistered functionality, because we have completed with all the other methods and functionalities. So let's unregister a vendor. So basically unregister can be invoked by a chairperson only. Chairperson here refers to credential issuing authority. So we'll unregister the vendor, that is account number 6th, but we will going to choose the account number 5th because account number 5th refers to the chairperson account. So we'll copy the address of the vendor and paste it in the address bar. Similarly, after pressing the unregister, we will get a confirmation pop-up from the MetaMask and will confirm the transaction. As you can see, the following address has been unregistered successfully and the transaction has been performed successfully. For the reference, we will going to the backend at the Remix to check whether the address has been unregistered successfully. It will going to yield 0. Yeah, here it is. Now the vendor has been successfully unregistered. For the reference, we will also check it from the front end, whether vendor is able to call the function or not. So we'll switch it into the 6th account, that is the vendor account, and try to perform the transaction. Selecting the 6th account. Now checking the credentials or getting the validity of the credentials. We'll take the credential address and paste it in address bar. You can see we are not able to get or fetch the credentials because the vendor has been unregistered into the blockchain. So no transaction is permissible to that particular vendor. This we have shown all the transaction on the local network, that is a Ganache, so that we can avoid the latency of the networks and the response and the request to the server.